Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Talos Principle. Today we will be going through the second world and discussing matters much more in-depth and interesting than just the core gameplay mechanics. I must apologize, I actually recorded World 2 and World 3 already, but wasn't able to upload the episode to YouTube, and decided to use the opportunity to better improve upon what I want to talk about and not make as many mistakes. So for this episode, we will only be going through World 2, and I will go through the level I've already completed. We'll talk to you later. Let's just go through this one first. I figure since this is a game about a robot going through all these different puzzles, let's discuss the issues of problem solving and artificial intelligence. Now, it's no secret that AIs today are actually quite stupid. As Michio Kaku describes it, they currently have the intelligence of a particularly stupid cockroach. The sigil will be right here. And that's a bit of a problem if you want artificial intelligence to do anything more than just go through pre-programmed paths. The robotic arm that manufactures vehicles, every single movement, every twitch, every turn has to be programmed in by a person. So what happens if the car it's working on is just an inch to the right and it's trying to insert a screw? Well, it's going to keep failing to insert that screw until the end of time unless a human intervenes. But if it had a bit of problem-solving capabilities, it would be able to see, hold on a second, this isn't, in the right place, I should adjust myself. I should adjust myself so I can better, so I can actually insert it into the right slot. Now, one particular case that fascinates me about AI and problem solving is actually a neural algorithm or genetic algorithm. Both.
Good. You are learning, as is your purpose. But your choices must be your own. Therefore, I will not guide you, unless it is necessary.
Then can you please shut up so I can talk? A neural algorithm or genetic algorithm both mean the same thing, essentially, of an AI that's supposed to play through Super Mario World. The AI had no prior inputs by the person who made it, so for a long while it didn't even know how to move. Its only parameters were get to the right of the screen and do so as fast as possible. Eventually, it came to a part of the level where it needs to jump over a pipe, but that pipe is far too tall for Mario to actually jump over. Instead, the AI has to hit an enemy off of a moving platform, and then jump on the platform and jump over the pipe. It seems simple and intuitive to a human, especially someone who is familiar with how to play the Super Mario games. But for an AI who had no prior knowledge, outright impossible. It is interesting to know that such a problem-solving issue isn't limited to AIs. Recently, a rather infamous video of a playthrough of the first level of a platformer game called Cuphead was made, where some video game journalist who had 18 years worth of experience writing about video games continuously failed to get through the tutorial level, where the problem was it had to jump on a block and then jump over a higher pillar. So jump on the block, then jump up and use a dash move to get over a pillar that is otherwise too tall to jump over. Bringing both of these. So how would you solve this issue for an artificial intelligence? How would you give the robot arm the ability to move slightly to the right and, you know, insert the screw into the right slot in the car it's building? How would you get the AI to successfully finish that part of Super Mario World? Well, there are a few options I can think of right now. First of all, it needs better vision. The Mario playing AI could only see two colored blocks. One color to represent surface it's able to walk on, and another to represent any and all items or entities. That means enemies, power-ups, projectiles, all of it was represented by the same colored block, which is very limiting. For example, if everything here was just represented by a single colored block, this tree, this wall, that rock, would you really be able to decipher what they're supposed to be? Additionally, the AI needs better parameters. The Mario playing AI only knew it was supposed to go right and do so as fast as possible. It didn't think that going to the left a little bit so that it can attack the enemy, which it couldn't even register as an enemy, simply as something to avoid at all costs after being killed by a different single colored block. I'll visit him later. It needs the ability to expand and innovate and look back on itself. I'll be going more into this discussion in the next episode. I want you to sort of reflect on what I mentioned here and, you know, try to come up with your own ways to solve the issue. You have an artificial intelligence that, for all intents and purposes, needs to figure out how to do something, that its previous experience wouldn't allow it to figure out. It can't base the solution strictly off of what it knows previously. Let's talk to this guy. Guest unknown. For this part of the game, we're going to be answering a few questions in order to create an account. None of these passwords are the right ones, so we're just gonna go through about 3 or 4 of them. They don't work. Want to create a new account? Yes. To prove you are not a bot. The machine becomes so advanced that now it's able to bypass a simple prove you're not a bot check on a computer interface. Let's begin the certification program and answer some philosophical questions. 1 out of 4, 2 plus 2 equals, well, obviously that's 4. What is your subjective reaction to this image? Content, mountains, angry, face. I'll go, since it's possible that people would answer it as angry or content, I'll go for the middle of the road and say it's a face. What best describes a person? A human being, a citizen, a being of negative entropy, a rational animal, and a problem-solving system. Well, dogs, elephants, chimpanzees, octopi, crows. There's a lot of rational animals, ones that are able to utilize reason to solve basic problems. But we wouldn't be calling them persons. Palm trees, hermit crabs, anything alive is a being of negative entropy, but we wouldn't call them persons. Computers, simple AIs, calculators are problem-solving systems, but we wouldn't call them persons yet. We don't have an AI sufficient enough that we'd be comfortable saying, yeah, that's a person and deserves, all the rights and respect that comes with being a person. Every human being wouldn't necessarily be called a person either. If you come across a dead guy, or a dead person, I suppose. Well, actually, I guess that is a contradiction. I was going to say if you come across a dead guy, you'd say, yeah, it's a human being, but not necessarily a person, but I suppose through sheer semantics, you could say it's still a person. It's still deserving of some basic respect, even if it is more of an object than anything now. But I'm going to go with a citizen because it's the only thing here that I don't think can be disputed or have exceptions to being a person. Like, if you're a citizen of any country or province or whatever, you are likely going to be a person. While if you are a human being, personhood can still be stripped from you. You can have certain rights and base respects denied at you because you're not truly considered a person, even if you are considered a human being. If that makes any sense. You're walking through the desert and come across a thirsty traveler. His eyes bulge from the slow dehydration. You have water, but you're not sure how far it is to the next oasis. What do? Offer him half of it, offer all of it, ignore him, ask what you're doing in the desert, kill him and collect his blood in a flask for later. Well, blood wouldn't be very useful to me, and there's too many unknowns with it. I certainly wouldn't be able to immediately tell the blood type of a person I come across in the desert, so even if I kill him, collect his blood, and drink it, that can actually pose some serious risks to me. I could ignore him, but I'd like to think of myself as at least a little bit of an empathetic human being. I could offer him half of my supplies, or I can offer him all of it, but I don't know how far it is to the next oasis, and I'm not sure where he's walking along, and if there's an oasis in his general direction either. So if I'm going this way, and I come across a guy going this way, I have no idea how far until the next drink that way, just as much as I don't know this way. But if I ask him what he's doing in the desert, I can find out quite a bit of information. I can find out how much there is to drink this way, where he even came from and what he was doing along that way, where he thinks he's going this way, if he knows anything about where I'm going this way, and we can probably end up like agreeing to work together and have, an extra set of hands, an extra mind, which probably isn't going to be at peak performance if he's severely dehydrated. But human beings, being a social and rational animal, we're evolved to work best working together. So I will ask what you are doing in the desert. Part 1 of the certification process is now complete. You will receive a notification when Part 2 has been generated. Press any key to exit, and just clicking this button, so it's not really any key. But for our troubles, we get a few emails. Oh, nothing here is really helpful. At most, you can say it's sort of an allusion to the start of the game, where you wake up in this strange place, not knowing what you are. You're a robot, but are you a thinking entity? How you got here, and what made this place to begin with. Your only suspicion is that Elohim made it, but understanding that this whole place is a simulation, even if the robot wouldn't know, you, the player, should know that there's something outside of the simulation who made it, and thus likely made Elohim too. One day you discover you are not a human being, but a machine. Your life so far was real. No one controlled you or programmed you to behave in some specific way. Your physical and mental capabilities are identical to those of an organic human being, but you were created in a lab. No one except you knows about this. Your family, your friends, they all think you are a regular human being like themselves. You could continue to live your life the way you have before and nothing would change. How would you react? I suppose I would be incredibly surprised and suffer a bit of an existential crisis. Like how well I was disguised as a human being. Since I have, bled out, I have undergone surgery, I can have had examinations done that would indicate that I truly am a human and not a robot. So first things first, I would be pretty damn surprised. Does your concept of yourself change? Are you the same person you thought you were? Wouldn't be exactly the same, but I wouldn't have too many different opinions about life and everything. I'm already of the opinion that an AI can be so advanced it can mimic every single human emotion, and I'm of such an opinion, and I hold to that opinion so much that I think that if we ever make like androids specifically for subservience, there'd have to be extreme measures taken to ensure that they don't reach, a capability to desire freedom or desire sheer independence. Does your understanding of the world itself change? No, I think the world would still operate quite the same. I'd like to know where these robots that look so much like humans are made, and what are the extents and capabilities of these robots. Are they limited to the physical and mental capabilities of a human, or are they more? Are they immortal? Can they become immortal? Do you reveal the information to others, or do you keep it to yourself? I think I would keep it to myself unless I came across, say, a scientist of sorts, or, really good engineer. I don't think family or friends would be able to offer much in the way of help or assistance to figuring out this philosophical and existential conundrum, but someone with actual knowledge in machinery and artificial intelligence and those sorts of problems might be able to offer some good input. This is probably some essay students were supposed to write. So this, I think, is the first real indication that something major is happening outside of the simulation, or has happened. This simulation has been running for thousands of years, supposedly. What's going on outside? Well, apparently the end of the world. Some people are incredibly serene, some people are stocking up because they think that it's something they can survive out. And this person who writes it just doesn't even know what to truly do. This is not working.
When I was a little girl, one of our teachers, Mrs. Higgins, told us to make a time capsule, write letters to the future, so one day we could remember what it was like to be children. I thought it was stupid, so I didn't do it, which I really regret. So, I guess I'm gonna make one now, bury it in the archive instead of under a tree. I don't know if anybody will ever find it, but somehow it seems important to keep talking, to keep thinking, for as long as I can.
Oh, that certainly describes this Let's Play, just rambling on and on. There's a star we can collect. Have to get one of those. exactly how to do right now, so... we'll just ignore it and come back to it later. The first world and the second world, or first hub and second hub. Let's see if this guy says anything. I'll let you pause here and then we'll continue on. Again, a bit of an allusion to the game itself, waking up with no actual idea of what went on and why you're there. And then, of course, taking a science fiction novus at the core of the narrative at face value is, we're a robot in a simulation. Look, we have a name for our game now. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but Straton of Stagiria is a fictional character. And I don't mean like, fictional, like, did Socrates or Jesus actually exist as a real person, but he's literally someone made up by the developers of the game as sort of a person to represent the overall philosophy of it. He talks about how these constructs called the Talos, which actually existed in Greek mythology, were giant bronze automaton, were given life and had all the essential properties of a man. So the overall question of the game is, could a machine realistically be a person? I bet if I could unlock this, knew where the keys were, there'd be one of those jammers in there that I can then use over there. But as said before, we'll be ignoring that today, and I can't tell if the documents on the terminals are all that's left from a larger archive, or are carefully designed to communicate some hidden truth. Well, both are right for different reasons. The in-game universe seems to imply they're part of a larger archive that has since been corrupted, and most of the documents are just unrecoverable. But for the purpose of the guy playing through the game and reading everything, they are supposed to represent the questions and themes of, artificial intelligence. I keep saying a lot. I really need to work on not doing that. Of artificial intelligence, robotics, what it means to be a person. Just for fun, let's try to swim out into the great unknown.
Beginning were the words, and the words made the world. I am the words are everything. Where the words end, the world ends. You cannot go forward in an absence of space. Repeat. In the beginning.
Okay then. I don't know what this place is, and nor, it seems, does anyone else. Nothing to do but move forward and note whatever I find. Sheep version 69. I'm not sure if this is trying to imply that these other robots have interacted with robots, or if they're just basing it off of the notes. I'm pretty sure it's only based off of the notes and not that one actually came across one of the others, like version 17, I think, or Faith. Let's end the video with exploring some beautiful scenery, and then we'll head back to the hub world. I do hope this video has been a bit interesting for you guys to watch. As said before, like, I'm new to this whole Let's Playing thing, so I don't know, like, the best ways to go about making them. So if you have any advice or any criticisms, do let me know, because I am interested in improving. I'll get that star later. Or we can just continue on. Let's just do that for a little bit of fun. Since only citizens can be persons, a hermit cannot be a person. I disagree. I believe that every citizen is classified as a person, but I don't necessarily think every person would be classified as a citizen. Just like I think that every construction worker would be classified as knowledgeable in how to handle building things, but not everyone who's knowledgeable in building things is a construction worker. So I broadly disagree. A person is under no authority other than that which they consent. I'm going to be totally honest, I'm not exactly sure one way or the other with this. I haven't thought much of it, so I will broadly agree for the sake of argument. The quality of life of persons ought to be maximized. For most of human history, in order to even survive, you had to trudge through some real shit. Life was not very good. You had a very low life expectancy. Food was rather poor and scarce. It wasn't very fun. And in order to even get to the point where quality of life is decent, a lot of people had to suffer along the way. You could argue the suffering was needless and there were better ways to go about it, but nonetheless our history is built on suffering. But just because it's necessary for suffering in order to make a better tomorrow doesn't mean that's what it ought to be. The fact that we are trying to make a better tomorrow shows that we think it ought to be maximized, the quality of life. So I shall broadly agree. Value is discovered. I don't think there's a lot of things considered valuable that were discovered per se, as opposed to just arbitrarily declared valuable. What is valuable is based on a few things like scarcity and how much they appeal to our primitive desires. Gold is considered valuable because there's not a lot of it and it's quite pretty. diamonds are considered valuable for the same reason, though there is a bit of an artificial scarcity within the diamond industry. Meanwhile, things like dirt aren't considered valuable to us because it's so abundant. Water in a lot of places isn't considered valuable because it's abundant, but in places where it's super scarce, it's considered super valuable. I will broadly disagree. Persons deserve the talents they were born into. I don't think they necessarily deserve it because they didn't really work for it. They were just born with a better set of genes than people who don't have them. Someone has the right base pairs and genomes that allow them to better figure out how to paint pictures or do math or play the piano. Now, this isn't to say that if we have the option to strip them of their talents, we should and make them start from square one, or that what they produce is worth less than someone who did work to get to that position. But I don't think it's necessarily, deserved. It's just something that happened. Completely neutral, but I broadly disagree with the fact they deserve it. The liberty of persons ought to be maximized. Similar to what I mentioned here, throughout a lot of human history, we were in a very crappy situation where we couldn't afford the luxuries and freedoms we have today. I don't think with the kind of farming equipment and agricultural knowledge that exists now, we'll ever go back to having massive amounts of slaves doing our farming. But that's simply because technology has a major impact on society and egalitarian values. You can probably argue that, liberties of a person's had to be limited in the past, but now that we understand, or that society seems to be moving in a direction where it wants better technology, it wants to free our hands more and more with each successive technological leap, and with the direct impact it has on people's freedoms and liberties, I'm going to say that the liberty of persons ought to be maximized, as I believe that technology ought to be improved as much as possible. Value is created. With the exceptions of some things like water or shelter or food, which you absolutely must have in order to survive, I would argue that even with the fact of scarcity, dirt isn't valuable, gold is, it still is arbitrary. Neither of them are necessarily very useful to a person, though walking around with a bunch of gold does show a bit of status compared to someone who doesn't have any gold. But if humans never found any gold, I don't think much would exactly change for our condition, so I'm going to broadly agree. The certification process is complete, and let's leave. And we've already read all of these, so let's exit. Thus concludes the second video. It's still a bit longer than I anticipated, simply because, doing both questionnaires and just walking around and observing the scenery. Once again, if you have any suggestions for improvements or criticisms or any topics you'd like to see me discuss, since this is a very talking heavy let's play about, I keep doing the thing, about a lot of interesting subjects, let me know. Until then, thanks for watching. Next episode, we'll explore part 3 and learn just how difficult this red piece is. Goodbye.